Let's play some games on the Ambernic 280V. Well, hi everybody, Tech the Weeb here. So this is the Ambernic 280V. I did a big long video about this guy. I did an unboxing and showed off the hardware, telling you what I thought about it. I had some problems and I solved them and I explained all that. And I tell you about the Atom image, which is the firmware that I installed to get these awesome menus and extra emulators. So please check out that video before watching this one. This video is really just an extended gameplay test. I recorded lots of footage of the emulators and Atom image, and I wanted to have a good old geeky chat about retro games, and that's what this video is. I think I'm gonna start with the earliest systems and work my way up, so we'll start with Atari 2600. Now, what can you say about the 2600 games? You know, they're always fun to dabble in. None of them are much fun for more than a few minutes, in my opinion. If you know of any Atari 2600 gems that I just gotta try, let me know in the comments and I'll check them out. For me, they've always just been a bit of a novelty. These games from the ancient past before humankind knew much about what makes a good game. I don't mean to badmouth the Atari if you were really into the Atari. I had an Atari too and I had fun with it. It's just, you know, the games don't really have much to offer me today. Unlike the next system, which is the NES, which is the first game system that I ever owned. I got this before the Atari, if you could believe that. My mom found an old Atari at a garage sale when I was a bit older. I grew up playing the NES, and tons of the games on this system have stood the test of time and are still great games today. I love firing up these old Nintendo games and even discovering new games that are really good that I never played when I was a kid. It really is the true king of the 8-bit era. Now we're onto the PC Engine, which we call the TurboGrafx 16 here in Canada. I didn't have this system when I was a kid. My cousin had it, and I got to play it at his house. I didn't see this cousin very often, so I didn't get to play the system very often. And because of that, I always kind of wanted to play the system, just because it was like forbidden fruit that I hardly ever got to play with this weird system that none of my other friends had. I really enjoy going through the library of games on this system, now that I have access to all the games and able to try out all those games. I only got to play for a few minutes at my cousin's house and discover new ones too. Then we're on to the Game Boy. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about my history with the Game Boy, because I just did a video on my history with the Game Boy. Check out my search for the perfect Game Boy video, linked in the description below. You've seen me test it a million times already. This is Burger Time. I always got to try Burger Time, you know that. It was one of my favorite games a long time ago, and it's still one of my favorite games. I could just pick up and play this game anytime, and have a great time playing it. And I guess I should mention that it plays great on this device. The scaling is perfect, it looks great on this screen. Yeah, the 280V. It's a wonderful little Game Boy device. Now we're on to the Game Boy Color. I never owned a Game Boy Color. I had friends that had the Game Boy Color. I just wasn't into portable games when this system was around. And it's a shame because there's lots of really good games on this. Every time I fire up a game I've never played, I'm always kind of pleasantly surprised at how good they look and how mature the gameplay is. It really was a good system, and I'm kind of glad I never had one or played lots of the games, because that just means that there's this many more games for me to try and discover now. Same thing with the Gamegear. That's another one I never owned, never had any interest in it at the time. I was more of a Nintendo kid, I didn't really get into the Sega systems as much. And now there's a whole bunch of games I can discover. You know, lots of these games on the Gamegear, they haven't blown me away or anything, but you know, they're still fun to check out. Every time I go diving through the list of Gamegear games, I always find at least one or two that amuse me for a little while at least. And yeah, here's the Atari Lynx, which is another portable system, and another one that I never owned. Another one I like to find all these little hidden gems that I never got to play. There's something that feels really natural about playing portable games on a portable retro handheld. You know, you can play the fancy console games, but you know, lots of these portable games are kind of just one and done little obscure titles that are quick. Oh, look at this one here. This one's called Basket Brawl. It's like a basketball fighting game where you can punch people in the face while you're playing basketball. I never had any idea this game existed. I just found it in my list as I was going through looking for games to play. That's why I love these little devices. And the last portable handheld system in our list is the Geo Pocket, another one I didn't own. I don't really think this was released in Canada. If it was pretty unknown. I never even heard of this system until I got older and started finding out about these retro systems. I wanted to show you one thing here. When I turned on Samurai Showdown, you see there's a bit of a weird grid on the screen. That's because the atom image, it comes pre-configured with all the shaders applied, and I don't think that this one looks good. It's easy to change though, you just open up the RetroArch settings, and you back out to the video options. I like the LQ2X shader, it just kind of scales up the image without any smoothing. I think it looks really good like this. If you want to apply it so that it does it with all of the games in this system all the time, you just save that as an override from the overrides menu. You can apply it to this game, or you can apply it to the entire core all the time. And that's what I did here. Oh, I lied. That wasn't the last portable system. How could I forget the Game Boy Advance? That's my favorite portable system, so obviously we gotta do that. I will say that the Game Boy Advance games played absolutely perfectly. There was a few games that didn't run very well on a couple of the last consoles that I reviewed, like the Pal Kitty V90, the LDK, or the BitBoy. Yeah, there's a couple games that didn't run well on any of those. I tried all those games on this, and they all ran perfectly fine. No issues. I couldn't find a single Game Boy Advance game that had any issues at all, which is awesome, you know? The Game Boy Advance was such a good portable system. This is a good portable device. It makes sense that you want to play the best portable system on a great device like this. Now, if you buy this to play some Game Boy Advance, you definitely won't be disappointed. I'm gonna have so much fun playing so many Game Boy Advance games on this thing. And the scaling just looks crystal clear. Absolutely perfect to my eyes. I love it. Now we're going back to the consoles. This is the Sega Master System. I never had one of these. I didn't know anybody with one of these. I don't really think it was very popular where I lived in Canada. This is a 8-bit system, I believe. It's sort of the answer to the NES, you know, it came out a few years after the NES and has about the same level of graphics as the NES. I don't really care about this system, to be honest. I've never found a single game that's really interested me. Unlike the next system here, which is the Sega Mega Drive, that we called the Sega Genesis here in Canada. This one, my friend had this one, and I used to play it at her house. I had a Super Nintendo at the time, so I'm kind of thankful that I had the Super Nintendo, and she had the Sega Genesis, and we could kind of play both systems at once and see both systems. And she had a bunch of games that I still like playing. You know, I feel like firing up good old Aladdin for memories of hanging out with my friend. And there's actually lots of good games on this system. I always discover new games when I go through this list. There's a whole bunch of them. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. What are some Sega Mega Drive, Sega Genesis games that I should check out? And now we're on to the famous Super Nintendo. This system I definitely had, and this was probably the retro system that I played the most. I was a Super Nintendo freak. I love this system so much. I spent so many summer days and nights when I should have been outside playing and getting exercise, just goofing around on my Super Nintendo, playing some Donkey Kong Country, playing Jurassic Park. Yeah, the Donkey Kong Country, speaking of Donkey Kong Country, that game was a phenomenon. You know, I had a subscription to Nintendo Power magazine at the time, and when Donkey Kong Country was coming out, they released these promotional, like, VHS tapes where they were kind of showing the graphics that were going to be in the game, and it was just so exciting to have a game that was built on, like, 3D graphics. It wasn't actually a 3D game, but just 2D, but, you know, you could tell that they rendered the characters in 3D. There was just so much that this system could do. You know, like the Mode 7 games that sort of had the semi-3D look. And game development at the time, by the time it got to the Super NES, it was really mature. And most of the games that came out for the Super Nintendo felt much more like modern games. Like going back and playing lots of these games, they feel more like modern games than the 8-bit era. And that's good, you know, on a system where you want to go back and play some games and chill out and, you know, experience these old systems. It's nice to play the systems that, you know, kind of still are fun to play, unlike lots of the older ones, in my opinion. Sega CD is on here, but none of the games worked for me. Maybe there's a way you could get them to work. Maybe you could try a different emulator. I didn't want to mess around with it. I didn't care, to be honest. Now we're moving on to Mame, and these were kind of hit or miss, as Mame always seems to be for me. I don't have the best luck with Mame, that's why I kind of just don't really bother that much. You know, there's usually some sort of issue with like the ROM set compared to the emulator you're running. I know there's a specific set of ROM sets that are supposed to work with this thing. This game came preloaded on the device, so, you know, kind of aware that some of the games that came with it don't really work very well. Although, I will say that most of the Mame games that come with the system do work well. Yeah, you can see here, this one's running just fine. And yeah, you can see here, this one's Punisher, and it's running just fine. So, you know, hit or miss as usual with Mame, that's the way it goes. Now, let's move on to Neo Geo. And, you know, if I'm going to play arcade games, I'm going to play them in Neo Geo emulator. Because the Neo Geo arcade games are some of the best arcade games that are out there. And they're all in the same system, the Neo Geo system. The Mame games, they're all different systems. Each game is like its own console. And so that's why you get so many weird compatibility issues, and you gotta match the ROM sets, and even then, some of them are stuttery and they're hard to troubleshoot. With Neo Geo games, they all just work. And they're some of the best arcade games that are out there. I love these Neo Geo games. But when I first started emulating retro games on my PC a long time ago, the Neo Geo games were the ones that I played just because I loved those games. I loved me some good old Metal Slug. Me and my friend, we played through all the Metal Slugs from start to finish in one epic marathon. It was so much fun. These are just great games, and it's so nice that they work perfectly on this system. The final arcade system that they have on here is Final Burn Alpha, and, you know, the Final Burn Alpha is supposed to work better, it's supposed to have better compatibility, and it's pretty good, but, you know, there's still some games on here that don't work so good. Like, here's my favorite top-down shooter, Gunburn 2. Take a look at the performance. So yeah, it's not ideal, obviously, but then we have Dodon Apache, which is another great top-down shooter, and it works fine. So, you know, it's a tired story by this point, but arcade games, they're just hit or miss, and it's nice when they work, it's a bummer when they don't. It's a bummer when your favorite ones don't work. There's so many on here that, you know, you're not gonna really miss them, to be honest. And it's good that most of them do work, and tons of great games do work on here, because these arcade games, they actually play amazing on this little thing. It's really fun to play fighting games and shooters on this thing, and even beat-em-ups and things. The D-pad, you know, I was complaining about it at the start, but I got used to it and I was pulling off moves, no problem. Just the quality of the screen and the actual device itself, it really feels great to play arcade games on this thing. So I'm glad that so many of them do work, even though there are a few hiccups with lots of them. This thing also does some PC games. Here we're playing some Doom. Let me tell you something funny about Doom. This was back in like 1995, 96 or something. We had a computer with a 386 processor and a 40 megabyte hard drive. And I got Doom, and the computer didn't play Doom very well at all. I had to shrink the screen really, really small, you know, to get it to even run. But I was happy that I had Doom that I could actually play on my own computer. But here's the thing, the hard drive was only 40 megabytes. So to play Doom, I had to uninstall Windows, install Doom, play it, and then when I was done, I had to reinstall Windows because my mom needed to use the computer. And I had my save games on a floppy disk too. So every time I wanted to play, I had to go through all that and copy over my save games. Yeah, the things that PC gamers have to go through, especially back in the good old days. Am I right? Now we're on to the star of the show. Here's the PlayStation performance. In my opinion, this is why you would buy a device like this instead of something cheaper like the PAL Kitty V90, or even an older device like the LDK or the BitBoy or something like that. You know, devices in this form factor, we don't really have a lot of choices. Obviously, you could get bigger, wider devices to play, you know, more advanced games, and you have lots of choices with those. But this form factor, the Game Boy form factor with the screen on top and the buttons below, we don't really have a ton of choices, especially if you want the smaller pocket-friendly versions. That's where the Ambernic 280V shines. It can play some PlayStation games, and it plays them great.
What about Nasty Newark? I'm going after him.
You know, I played a ton of PlayStation games, and they all worked really good. I didn't download every PlayStation game in existence and try them all. I'm sure there are some that would have a little bit of slowdown, or you'd have to enable frame skip, or actually when I was trying out Driver 2, that you'll see in a minute, there was a little bit of slowdown, but it didn't bother me enough to even bother turning on frame skip. I still just played it, and it was totally playable and totally enjoyable. So it is kind of crazy that we have a device in this form factor at this price point that can actually play PlayStation games. And I did have a PlayStation, and I had it modded with a mod chip, so I did have a fair number of games, but I really didn't play lots of games back then when I had this, and I really missed out on a ton of great games. There are so many good PlayStation games, and I really want to experience lots of these. I want to play through all the PlayStation Final Fantasies that I never got to try. I want to find some good old adventure games and some different RPGs, and you know, like there's just such a good library for this system, and this little device, it handles it so well. So that's why I wanted this device, is that it can handle the more problematic games from the 16-bit era, like the you know, Game Boy Advance games that didn't work great on the, you know, PAL Kitty or the LDK. And it can handle the more advanced, newer stuff too, like PlayStation. Well, that's why this is the star of the show, and that's why this device shines. It's because you can get the performance that you need on the more difficult to run stuff, and the more advanced stuff too. It's a double whammy. And that brings us to the end, so please let me know in the comments below what's your favorite game that I didn't try. Anything you think I'd enjoy? Or anything you want to see running on the Ambernic 280V, just let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, give me a thumbs up if you like the video, or a thumbs down if you didn't like it. Subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.